Welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. For those of you listening to the audio version, the podcast version, which if you don't subscribe to our podcast, head to Air Raid Buffalo, iTunes, Spotify, you name it. We are there. I mean business tonight. How do you know I mean business tonight? I got the hat on backwards. You know I mean business tonight. But in all sincerity, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be my Jordan flu game because apologies for the late start. I was at a golf tournament this afternoon. It was supposed to tee off at 11 Pacific time. Ended up teeing off at 1 o'clock Pacific time. So slightly dehydrated, maybe a little buzzed, but I am here. I am here to co-host the Air Raid Hour with Tilt Money here. Dave, how you doing tonight?
Good. I had my own issues tonight. Tried to put my daughter down to bed at like 7. And about 15 minutes ago, that's 9:15, she finally went down. So you're talking a little over 2 hours struggle for me.
It was meant to be. Me late tonight was meant to be. The number of people who looked at me during this golf tournament was like, you have a 7-week-old daughter home and you're out here drinking beers and golfing. And I was like, yeah, my wife's awesome. I'm allowed to do this sometimes. But hey, Brandon Bean, like always on a Monday, gives us some breaking news. And I mean breaking news, guys. Dean Marlowe has returned to the Buffalo Bills on what I'm assuming is a 1-year veteran minimum deal. And the Buffalo Bills also signed somebody named Joel Wilson, UDFA tight end out of Central Michigan. We had talked previously on this podcast about a little shocked at the lack of numbers for the Buffalo Bills at the tight end position. So they add a tight end in Joel Wilson. Dave, we got to step up our draft prep. I've never heard of Joel Wilson before, the UDFA out of Central Michigan, but the Buffalo Bills now up to 89 roster spots. Any thoughts on Dean Marlowe or Joel Wilson?
Well, we'll say about Dean Marlowe, right? I think Bill's secondary was already in really good shape, corners, safeties combined before this signing. From a familiarity standpoint, it makes sense to bring Marlowe back, have him compete in camp. I also think it is going to do a lot of good come those long days in the summer where the Bills could potentially give more rest to guys like Poyer and Hyde throughout training camp. Having a guy like Marlowe back there who is going to be in the right places. He's going to have the right communication. He knows the system. If he makes the final 53, that remains to be seen. But I think from a training camp standpoint, it does give you flexibility to give guys like Poyer and Hyde more rest throughout the summer. And I think that's a positive because we know injuries crept up on those guys during camp last year and ultimately led to some pretty major games missed. And on top of that, we still don't know exactly what the future is with DeMar. We think he's going to come back and play. It certainly looks like it, but it just gives the Bills a little bit more insurance. Obviously, they weren't up to the 90-man roster yet. And like you said, it's probably for a vet minimum deal. It's probably going to be very minimal in the means of dead cap, if any, if they decide that he doesn't make the team, which he might not. But I think it's a smart move to try to make sure that Hyde and Poyer are definitely 100% for week 1.
Jessica Tennis comes in and says, Judge should have 3 more beers because it would make a really fun podcast. Unfortunately, the second this thing is over, I'm on dad duty till 2 a.m., so I can't be drinking any more beers. And Pops Mafia comes in and says, is that the last roster spot? No, we still got 1 more. We're at 89. So we can still hold out hope for Yannick Ngakoue, Justin Houston, Leonard Floyd. We can still hold out hope for one of those edge rushers, but I don't know. The vibe I'm getting is that Von Miller might be ready for maybe even the start of training camp. So that's pretty exciting news. Just the way Von Miller is carrying himself, the way Brandon Bean has talked about Von Miller, sort of, I'm not going to say he said anything concrete, but just sort of hinted in his press conferences. Von Miller might be on the mend sooner rather than later. So maybe a Justin Houston or Yannick Ngakoue or Leonard Floyd is unnecessary in their mind. We're going to talk about a guy like AJ Epenesa tonight when we talk about guys whose contracts expire after this year. But you mentioned something a second ago. You mentioned give Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer a rest in camp. And I'll tell you what, I don't think these guys need rest because last year we tried to give them rest and they all got hurt. So maybe these two just need to be worked. So it'll be really interesting to see sort of how they, try to rest guys like Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, who are getting up there. Last year they tried, and I don't want to say it backfired because, injuries can't be you can't predict injuries, especially with guys who have been relatively healthy their entire careers. But we were so excited last offseason to give them a chance to rest. DaQuan Johnson, DeMar Hamlin, Jordan Thomas, RIP, now in Arizona. And it sort of backfired. But to me, this Dean Marlowe is DeMar Hamlin insurance, because it's an awesome and incredible story that DeMar Hamlin is probably going to be ready to go for training camp. But you just don't know what's going to happen once those pads come on.
Exactly. And I think the Bills realize, like, hey, we had good special teamer in DaQuan Johnson sort of backing up there as well. We had Dean Marlowe there, as you meant, as we brought him in, DeMar Hamlin. So you had some reliability for deep, right, in the past behind Hyde and Poyer, even though those guys really didn't play much in the way of defense. You had that special teams ability. You had some guys that you felt okay about coming in. And I still think this kind of goes back to some of the scars maybe that we saw last year when Hyde and Poyer got hurt. Like, it just really sunk the team in the back end. And I will say, like, they did bring Dean Marlowe back last year, and he wasn't active for a few weeks. So it's like, at least maybe now bringing him in this early, like, you feel pretty comfortable that if you get into a situation where maybe he somehow makes the roster as a 53rd guy, like, you feel okay about him potentially playing snaps on defense. But I would say he's still probably on the outside looking in at this point for a roster spot.
All right. On to the next topic I wanted to sort of touch on tonight was Bills OTA day one highlights, but the media really wasn't even invited to day one of OTAs.
Wasn't much news out there.
They, Dan Fetz, Thad Brown, they need to recover from their weekend at Oak Hill, covering golf. So the Buffalo Bills did them a favor, said, hey, we're not opening availability to media until Tuesday. So did any news really at all come out about OTAs? I know I haven't been on Twitter since about 2 p.m. Eastern time today.
No, not much really. I mean, I think the Bills sort of redirected some of that attention from OTAs to the signings they made with Dean Marlowe and Wilson, and like really pretty quiet on the OTA front. I mean, we were, kind of scouring social media earlier, guys in the Cover One chat talking about there's really not much out there now. Again, voluntary OTAs. I don't know about Diggs being in town. He doesn't usually show up to the voluntary workout, so I would be surprised if he was there. But obviously, I think one of the big spotlights is going to be on Dalton Kincaid for these voluntary workouts, how he looks. So hopefully by tomorrow we will get a little bit more insight, but certainly pretty quiet today on that front.
Yeah, it's the storylines of training camp, and we had some breaking news yesterday from the Bills Mafia babes. Josh Allen left Oak Hill to go down to DC to partake in Stephon Diggs and Trayvon Diggs charity basketball game. So for those people who are like, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs are not getting along, I don't know how much fuel you have for that fire now that Josh Allen, he left Oak Hill. He left a major to go down to DC and hang out.
We know how much he loves golf too.
And Trayvon Diggs. He says he wants to go to every major this year. I don't know how attainable that goal will be, but so it'll be interesting. If Stephon Diggs isn't in town, like, it doesn't matter. If he doesn't show up to mandatory, then we can have a conversation. But nobody works harder in the offseason than Stephon Diggs. I mean, every year, some of these videos come out of the workouts that him and his brother do, and they're just absolutely incredible. Like, the work that Stephon Diggs puts in is second to none. I know when we were doing our pre-draft talk, I really wanted Jaden Reed. I just took him in a dynasty fantasy draft, stole him from Bruce Nolan, who had a pick 2 picks after me. Really wanted him. He sent me a text. I don't think we're friends anymore. But I really wanted Jaden Reed because prototype-wise, body-wise, Jaden Reed and Stephon Diggs were similar. And I made the comment, like, I would love to get Jaden Reed in a room with Stephon Diggs because a lot of people wanted to take shots at like Jaden Reed's athleticism. But if you get a guy with his body type in a room with Stephon Diggs, the way Stephon Diggs has crafted his body and crafted his game since he's entered the National Football League is second to none. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So really not a concern at all that he's not at OTAs, but there will be the typical storylines. Josh Allen, does he look good in shorts? Is there chemistry with Dalton Kincaid? How does Dorian Williams look? Where's he lining up? Is the turkey chili in the mess hall any good? Those will be, I think, the top stories of OTAs. Anything else? I know, the Going Deep pod's going to cover this. Anthony Prohaska is going to cover this. Greg and Aaron, they'll talk about some stuff over the next couple of days. Anything you're looking forward to about this week of voluntary OTAs?
No, I think it would just be interesting to see sort of the offensive line if it comes in, as expected, assuming like the full 5 guys are there. Like we certainly expect it's gonna be Torrance manning that right guard position to start the season, but I would imagine he might not be there to start OTAs or to start camp just because of the nature of how things have kind of played out with this team. So I'll be really interested to see sort of the offensive line rotation and sort of how the Bills are going to cope with not really having a ton of depth at tackle. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting to me to see like what happens with Tommy Doyle. Like how does he look in OTAs? How does Spencer Brown look in OTAs? Like that type of thing. So it should be good.
Yeah, and of course, you're always going to see Josh Allen in a red jersey and in blue shorts, which is going to bring on the red jersey, white pants conversation, which is an important conversation to have because it should exist. I don't know why the NFL won't allow red jersey, white pants. It's sick. I do it all the time in Madden. And there's going to be some Josh Allen visor conversation as well. So prepare yourself for some Josh Allen visor conversation. Traz comes in. He says, button like the hit. He apologized for his dyslexia and said, hit that like button. But I honestly prefer button like the hit. So if you are in here, all 51 of you, if you could do us a favor, button like the hit. And we would really appreciate that from you guys. It really helps us with the algorithm, etc. All right. Today, our focus of conversation is going to be on players whose contracts expire after the 2023 season. So we're sort of taking a pause from talking about 2024 2023. And we're going to look forward to sort of next offseason because it's this point in the offseason where there's so little to talk about that we're going to preview next offseason and talk about some of the guys whose contracts are up. But before we do, this show is sponsored by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're not a towner like us, you can even get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it's just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, Dave, let's start our conversation tonight with Gabriel Davis. There are 2 polarizing figures in Bills Mafia this offseason. Number 1 is Gabriel Davis, and number 2 is Ed Oliver. And trust me, we're going to talk about them both tonight. And we're going to start with Gabriel Davis. So for all of the Bills' notable UFAs in 2024, I ran a poll on Twitter today for each of them. Gabriel Davis was the first one that I ran. And I gave people 3 choices. And I said, if you were to put yourself in Brandon Beane's shoes, what would you do with each of these pending unrestricted free agents? And they had 3 choices. A, extend now or in season. B, wait until the off season to make a decision about either re-signing or letting them walk. Or C, my mind is made up on this player already. Let them walk. I want nothing to do with them on the Buffalo Bills beyond 2023. Now, I purposely excluded a D, and the D that I excluded was trading the player for assets, because even though I personally wouldn't mind it if the Buffalo Bills signed Justin Houston and traded AJ Epenesa for a 3rd or 4th round pick, I wouldn't mind if the Buffalo Bills traded for DeAndre Hopkins and let go of Gabriel Davis, trade him for a draft pick. I personally wouldn't mind that. I don't really think that's the most realistic of possibilities. So I left that off the poll results. And starting with Gabriel Davis, extend now or in season came in at 22%. Wait until the offseason to decide came in at 66%. And mind is made up, let him walk came in at 12%. So Dave, I'm going to kick it to you, and people in the comment section, let us know your thoughts. What do you do about Gabriel Davis and his impending contract status? How do you approach that?
Let me just say this. I voted for extend him before the season. I know I'm in the minority on that. It was only 22%. I saw the poll today. I knew probably option B was going to get the majority of votes in most situations. I know there are a few we'll talk about later, but I'm of the opinion that I would extend Gabriel Davis now. And the reason for that is because I like to have that sort of locked in to where we're not constantly talking about like the Bills having to be forced into adding like receiver depth every single offseason or being forced into saying like, oh, we have to like draft someone early. I love the way that receivers in recent years in the NFL, especially early in drafts, have kind of like shaken the, I guess, the stigma that you can't produce as rookies. And so like I'm not opposed to kind of continuing to invest in the draft at that position, but I do see on the horizon the Bills having some potential needs still at the edges of their offensive line, at the interior of their defensive line, potentially at safety, depending on what happens, right? Potentially at linebacker, depending on what happens. So like I see a lot of needs for the Bills, and I feel like Gabriel Davis, for what he brings to this offense as a down the field option for Josh Allen and sort of complementing Stephon Diggs, like I would extend him now. And I think like, and Pete says can't keep Gabe because we can't underpay him. And I get that. And that's probably why he won't accept the contract right now. But if you think about some of these statistics since he's entered the league, 2020 through the 2022 seasons, first down rate, 75.5%, first in the league. Touchdown rate, 17.7%, first in the league. Average depth of target, 16.4, first in the league. Yards per reception, 17.2, first in the league. Explosive reception rate, 51%, first in the league. And he's only 45th in target rate. So he is the definition of sort of that, like, I don't want to, he's not Deshaun Jackson in the sense of like, he's not the same physical type of player Deshaun Jackson was. But if you remember Deshaun Jackson in his years with the Eagles, like he was the guy that you hated to have on fantasy because it was like one game he'd come on there with like 4 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the next game he would like maybe disappear a bit.
Yes.
And I feel like Gabriel Davis is kind of like the Bills version of that. Yeah. And yet he set career highs in yardage last year. He almost, he was over 900 yards last year. 983 yards last year, still was right on his sort of average of 17.6 yards a target, had the 8 touchdowns. So like he is a valuable commodity. And like, I think for me, I end up landing on the argument of, I think maybe people still have too high of expectations on Gabe Davis because of that playoff game. And yes, I'm still going back to that, but it's still staying with him all the way now through another season. So for me, I'm a big fan of Gabe Davis. I would extend him before the season.
Yeah, there's a lot to sort of digest here, so I'm going to try not to screw it up too much. Number one is you hit the nail on the head, right? Like he's got a niche, but is he ever going to be more than that niche? And that's the question you want to ask yourself. Like, is he worth a second contract when he's sort of like the guy the Buffalo Bills throw the ball deep to? Can Justin Shorter develop into that role by 2024? Can the Buffalo Bills go out and add another player to sort of fill that role? But at the same time, you have to balance the fact that can he do more? I know there are prominent Bills Mafia members who have questioned his athletic ability and his ability to do more, people like Joe Marino. So can or will Gabriel Davis be given an opportunity in 2023 to expand his route tree and to do more to sort of complement this offense? You also have to take into account the fact that the Bills really appreciate the fact that he is a mauler as a run blocker. He plays the most snaps of any wide receivers. He plays more snaps than Stephon Diggs because of his ability as a run blocker. So that's important. And you also have to sort of factor in the fact that, one of the perks of being here at Cover One is we're privy to sort of that Cover One group chat. And I'm not going to, give away any secrets or anything, but I feel pretty confident in telling you the Buffalo Bills like Gabriel Davis a lot more than I think a lot of fans in Bills Mafia do. Like they're enamored with him. They love his game. They love his fit. It goes all the way back to the combine when Brandon Beane was like, I hope he runs a slow 40 so we can draft him later than I want to. Right? Like the Bills love Gabriel Davis. So I personally, in his niche role as the sort of downfield guy, I would wait until the offseason, see how he delivers, and then I would assess whether I wanted to give him a contract or not. However, I don't think that's what the Buffalo Bills' intentions are. Unless the Buffalo Bills make a move for D-Hop sometime in the next 2-3 months, I wouldn't be surprised if a Gabriel Davis contract extension is in the works. And I look at the Jacoby Myers deal really as the deal that the Buffalo Bills might try to maneuver, right? 3 years, $33 million, $11 million per year. And that seems like a lot of money. And some people said earlier, like, you're going to have to overpay him. He's a niche receiver. He's down the field run blocker. $11 million. Do we really want to pay that? But the way the salary cap is going up, the way the Buffalo Bills like to pass the football, that could be a bargain.
That's what I put in the chat. I mean, I said 3 years, 30 million. I'd be comfortable, even if you push it up to 3 years, 35, 3 years getting on the closer to 40. Like, that's kind of if you wanted to give yourself a shorter term, give Gabriel Davis a chance to kind of help his own value for another contract after that. A 3 year, somewhere in between 30, 40 million total could give him a chance to really cash in again after that 3 years. Or the other way, if he's looking for something with term, like 5+ years, I think the Bills might be able to squeeze a little bit more in the sense of getting a little bit lower AAV if they give him a little more guaranteed money in that deal. If they were to say, like, come in at like a 5 year, and I put this in the chat too, like a 5 year, $60 million deal, where it's like right at that kind of 12 million a year mark. So you're not kind of pushing that 15 million a year AAV, 18 million a year AAV, that Christian Kirk range that he got. It just depends on, like, sort of where the Bills, I think, see him beyond the next couple years. Do they see him really as a foundational piece for 5 years and like 4 or 5 years and beyond, or is he more of like a 2-3 year type of guy? That's going to be the interesting thing to me.
Because you make a couple of good points there too. You look at Jacoby Myers' deal, the guaranteed money. You said give him a little bit more guaranteed money. You said 5 year deal, but if you look at Jacoby Myers' deal, 21 million guaranteed for injury of that 33 million, 10.5 million fully guaranteed at signing. So a lot of that contract Jacoby Myers signed with the Raiders was guaranteed. So it might be 11 million AAV, which might have been a little lower than a lot of us thought when we were talking about Jacoby Myers' contract. But a lot of that was fully guaranteed. So you might be able to lure a guy like Gabriel Davis in with that. And I think another thing too is I just want to at some point have this conversation. We're guilty, Dave, this podcast of maybe having too high of expectations for Gabriel Davis. Jessica Tennis mentioned that he played through an injury last year, which severely hampered him. And then he had to play through that injury because on top of him being hurt, Jay Kumaro was hurt worse. And he powered through that. And I spent last offseason guilty comparing Diggs and Gabriel Davis to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans in Tampa Bay. And I think your bold prediction for the season was 10 touchdowns for Gabriel Davis. He was 3 short of that. So our guy, Bruce Nolan, I'm going to mention him again, expectations minus reality equals disappointment. But as a number 2 receiver in the National Football League in his niche role in our offense, like, I do think the Buffalo Bills really value what he brings to the table.
Yeah, and I think that it's tough because he has shown up in some pretty big moments for the Bills in some big games. Obviously, that playoff game is the highlight of his career at this point, but we also know, like, some of those huge games he's had in other moments as well, right? In prior Chiefs games, he's had good games. Obviously, he's had other big games against the 49ers and good teams. He's had some good games against. And I think fans and us as well, right? I'll include myself in this, is like, because the Bills pass so much, we expect a lot out of the guys behind Diggs because we see how much attention Diggs gets and we see how reliably consistent Stephon Diggs is week in and week out. And I think we're a little bit spoiled with what we've gotten from Stephon Diggs, that it's kind of leaked a little bit into our expectations for other receivers on the team. Fair or not, it's probably not fair to them, right? It's that we expect, perfection or close to it from everybody on this team. And that comes with the expectations of the team and wanting this team to win a Super Bowl. So for me, I'm trying to kind of, like, level set my own, I guess, high expectations from last year. And I'm not going to go swing completely the other way for 2023 and say like have these like incredibly low expectations, but I'm going to look at his career splits and see like this guy averages 17.5 yards per catch. He's right around 50 catches every year, and he's probably going to have around 800 yards and seven to eight touchdowns. And that's going to be totally fine with me, I think, in 2023, if he hits that mark again.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Not everyone is Stephon Diggs. There's maybe 5-10 receivers in the NFL like him. So yeah, I think you'd like to see maybe the Bills take more swings early in the draft to try to find another Stephon Diggs. But you also have to maybe be a little bit more realistic in your expectations for the auxiliary receivers. Right? The Bengals are going to be in some trouble a year from now when Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and then Jamar Chase's contracts, they all come up. Like the Cincinnati Bengals are the exception to the rule. They're not the rule. So it'll be really interesting to see sort of how that progresses into 2024. The other polarizing figure is Bills Mafia is Ed Oliver. We're going to wait on Ed Oliver because I want to tie him into a conversation with DaQuan Jones, whose contract also expires, along with all of the Buffalo Bills defensive tackles. But I want to transition now to Micah Hyde. Age 32. He only played 1.5 games last season before that pretty gnarly neck injury that cost him the rest of his season. He would have made it back for the Super Bowl if the Bills had made it to the Super Bowl. And his role in 2023 is starting free safety. But the poll results on Twitter, extend now or in season, was 42%. Wait until the offseason to decide. That injury might be cause for concern for some people, 52%. Mind is made up, let him walk. And this could be an age factor, 7%, which I thought was surprisingly high, even though it's a rather low number. What are your thoughts on the future of Micah Hyde beyond 2023?
This is one where I probably would wait for the season. I think, given the age, given the injury, like I think, and I'm not saying this because I think the Bills have a great succession plan necessarily there. Like they don't really, right? Like we like to talk about Christian Benford and we like to talk about these options of moving guys around, but like the Bills didn't do it right last year with Benford. They didn't do it with other guys that we've talked about them doing that in the past. So like the succession plan behind Hyde isn't great. So I think that's a little bit of leverage for him, but they said succession plan began with Jordan Poyer as well. Maybe they thought that was DeMar Hamlin and it could still be, but I still would like to see how the season plays out. And I think that if he does play well, he maybe the Bills would be like, yep, we're going to pay you like a little more to come back for 1 year on a 1-year deal in 2024 to play that last season with Poyer, who's now under contract through 2024. So I think if you're Micah Hyde, you don't necessarily want to go into this season knowing you're on an expiring contract. But I also think that, that injury he had last year was gnarly, but he has, as you mentioned, been relatively healthy throughout his career. And I think if given the chance and he plays well, I can envision him taking a 1-year pretty decent money deal to come back to the Bills in 2024 to kind of to go for it again. And I could also see if the Bills do somehow win the Super Bowl in 2023, him retiring. So, I mean, this one's tough, but I voted for B on this one.
It's very tough. Brian Adams, PhD, comes in and says, let him play. Rapp is the replacement. Pat E comes in and says, yes, we got Rapp dirt cheap. But then Pete Nana comes in and says, Micah Hyde is a bail.
I just don't see Rapp as the center fielder though.
Yeah. There's so many factors at play here, right? Taylor Rapp, he didn't sign in Buffalo to be a backup. So I think there's a role for Taylor Rapp. I think he's going to be the thick dime. I think he's going to be the backup nickel. Teron Johnson's missed time in the past. I think he's the backup free safety. He's the backup strong safety. So with injuries and in sub packages, Taylor Rapp is going to see the field a ton. So the question is do you believe Taylor Rapp is a center fielder? I and you both believe Taylor Rapp is probably more in line for a Jordan Poyer strong safety role where he can be at the line of scrimmage more. Me personally, I brought this up and a couple of other people have brought this up, so I'm not going to claim to be like the only person saying this. If you feel comfortable with the injury, tack on a year to that deal and match his deal with Jordan Poyer's deal. Have their deals line up So they both have 2 years left on their contract. Let them both play out their contract as Buffalo Bills. Let those contracts expire together. And it gives you another off season to sort of go out and find some options, because you don't know what DeMar Hamlin's giving you. You don't know if Christian Benford can transition to safety. You don't know sort of what you have in Zane Anderson. And so you might want another year to
And you
assess
do
the
know what you
draft.
have in Dean Marlowe.
Yeah. I can almost guarantee you the Buffalo Bills draft a safety in the first 3 rounds next year. Honestly, I might go as far as first 2 rounds. Like, I'm a freak, and I've already worked the PFF draft simulator for 2024. Only 2 rounds, which is BS. They only let you do 2 rounds. DT and safety is what I take every single time. So it'll be really interesting to see. There are a number of factors. I lean A. I say, if you, and I'm not privy to the information the Buffalo Bills are privy to. If you feel confident in the medicals, give that, tack 1 year onto that man's contract, because Jordan Poyer didn't get as much money as we thought. It's not going to cost you $12 million to get Micah Hyde back for another season. It's going to cost you 7.5, 8. Do it.
Yep.
Do it. To me, it's an easy decision, but obviously I'm not privy to those medicals. All right, let's transition now to that other position, defensive tackle. No Buffalo Bill or legitimate defensive tackle on the Buffalo Bill is under contract in 2024 on the interior defensive line. Ed Oliver's a free agent. DaQuan Jones is a free agent. Jordan Phillips is a free agent. Tim Settle's a free agent. Puda Ford's a free agent. Everybody is a free agent. So if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, and you like college football, you might want to pay attention to defensive tackles every college football game you watch this year, because the Buffalo Bills are going to be in the market for some defensive tackles. Let's start the conversation with the most polarizing of all the figures, and that is Ed Oliver. Age 25, 34 tackles, only 2.5 sacks last year. That's unacceptable. I know he was injured. Unacceptable for a guy with his pedigree where he was drafted. I know sacks are more of a box score statistic, but I mean, come on, 2.5. That's unacceptable. His role for 2023 is the starting 3 tech. The poll results: extend now or in season, 11%. Wait until the offseason to decide, 61%. And here's how polarizing of a figure Ed Oliver is. Mind is made up. Let him walk no matter what, 28%. And that makes sense, because even if he has 10 sacks this year, you're going to have to ask yourself, were those 10 sacks like who Ed Oliver is? Or were those 10 sacks, I'm in a contract year, Ed Oliver? Because we've seen with players before, especially on the interior defensive line, sometimes once they get that money, that production drops. So what are your thoughts about what to do with Ed Oliver? Because C sounds like the stupid answer. I'm almost leaning to C, as irrational as that is.
It's going to be a tough pill for us to swallow as fans, seeing a top 10 pick potentially walk out the door, and potentially also have flashes of brilliance elsewhere. And the reason I say that is because he has had flashes of brilliance with the Bills. Has he been consistently dominant? No, but he has had his moments in some games. Have they been the most impactful of plays? Maybe a few here and there, but when the lights have shined the brightest, I would not say that he has always lived up to,
except for Thanksgiving,
lived up to the status. And this is coming from a guy who's like pretty supportive of Ed Oliver over the years, like we both have. But you're going to have to pay a guy like that who's 25, regardless of what you feel about him. He was a top 10 pick, and he's going to get big money on the open market regardless. Someone is going to pay Ed Oliver big money, and he is going to, next year, if it's not within a Bills uniform, have some pretty big plays, and we're going to look at it and say, damn, like we could have had that. But I implore you to go a little deeper and really take a look at the big plays he has and how impactful are they going to be on the outcomes of games. If he has 10 sacks this year, how impactful are those sacks? Are they in big moments? Are they in big games? Or are they box score stuffing type stats against lesser competition? Now, the schedule's tough, at least on paper so far this year. We don't know how it's really going to play out, but if he has 10 sacks this year, my guess would be those would be pretty impactful because the Bills don't have a lot of cupcake games on the schedule. And that's where the real dilemma comes in, because right now, if the Bills had wanted to, they could have given Ed Oliver a contract and gotten him for, probably the cheapest they could get him, right? Maybe last year. If he has an outstanding season this year, I don't see any way that he's back, because I think he's just going to price himself out.
Yeah.
It's going to be a Tremaine Edmonds type of situation in my mind.
And Brian Adams comes in, and this is why he's a doctor, folks. This is why he's got the PhD. He says, let him play and get the comp pick. And personally, I don't know if Brandon Beane feels this way, but I personally believe let Ed Oliver ball out on a contract because you're in a Super Bowl window. Let him walk, let him get paid elsewhere, and collect the compensatory pick. Anyone who listens to this show knows that I'm not a fan of these 280-pound three techs, right? Like, Aaron Donald is the exception. He's not the rule. And maybe Kalijah Cansey, drafted by Tampa Bay this year, can be the second coming. Who knows? But to me, I've always been anti three tech under 300 pounds. Everyone knows how much I love my big fatties, right? Like, I'm the Dalvin Tomlinson. I'm the Deron Payne. I'm the Dexter Lawrence. I'm the Chris Jones. I'm the Justin Simmons fan. Those are the defensive tackles that I like. I like them 300 plus pounds. So I'm just morally and philosophically opposed to these 280-pound three techs. To me, Ed Oliver has always been someone when he's flashed because other guys have made him better. DaQuan Jones, Von Miller, they freed him up to be effective. I don't think Ed Oliver's presence makes other people better. I don't think it works the other way. I don't think Ed Oliver makes DaQuan Jones better. I don't think Ed Oliver makes Von Miller better. And I'm not paying $10 million plus to a three tech who doesn't make everyone else around him better, who's dependent on those around him to flash and show that he's talented and to have an impact on a game. So it's tough because when he's good, he is good. But again, I don't know if he makes the rest of the defensive line around him better. And I think he also makes the linebackers worse because he's 280 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that maybe is working in his favor from a leverage perspective with the Bills is the fact that they don't have anybody under contract other than DJ Dale in 2024. So maybe DJ Dale's like, hey, I might have a chance to be a
2024
anyway,
Buffalo Bill, DJ Dale. Come on now.
2024. But like, I don't think the Bills clearly aren't too stressed about that, I don't think, or they probably would have forced their hand already and tried to bring him back. But it certainly seems like the Bills don't have a ton of stress right now in figuring out this defensive tackle situation because, man, they're gonna have a lot of holes. I mean, we're gonna talk about him in a second, but maybe Poona Ford, could he be someone that they maybe give a little bit of an extension to, depending on what he does?
It's 100%. Like, we're gonna talk about him later on the show. Like him, Damian Harris, and Taylor Rapp are the three guys to keep an eye on. They signed 1-year contracts for the Buffalo Bills, and it's going to be the conversation of like, do they have a big enough impact to warrant a second contract with the Buffalo Bills? And we'll have that conversation at the end of the show. But first, I want to transition to my favorite topic. That's big fat people. And I think DaQuan Jones, I think he counts as a big fat person, 31 years old, 2022, 22 tackles, 2 sacks. So like box score stats, not flashy, but his job was to eat space and to make everyone around him better. And he certainly did that. He was sorely missed when he was out of the lineup, including in the playoffs. His 2023 role will once again be the starting one tech. The poll results were a runaway 76% extend now or in season. And I agree. I think that's a no-brainer. Wait until the offseason to decide, 22%. And then his age, 31, might have played a factor in this. Mind is made up. Let him walk, 3%. You're Brandon Beane, Dave. What are you doing with DaQuan Jones and his contract status?
Yeah, I was one of the ones to contribute to that 76%. I say extend him now. It was clear what his absence meant to this team last year. Now I know the Bills got beat every which way in that Bengals game, so don't
We're not
say
talking,
this.
We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it.
It wasn't only because he was not there, but the Bills, for some reason, have only really invested at the one tech in one guy, whether it was Starr on the team or now DaQuan Jones. And it is a really important catalyst to the rest of the defense setting up the linebackers for success in secondary and so on, getting the edge rushers some space. So, like, to me, I know he's 31. I know he kind of ended the season with injury, but defensive tackles, especially the bigger guys who rely more on their size than they do necessarily like athleticism and in like sort of interior pass rushing, they tend to age well, right? I mean, we've seen guys like Harrison Phillips age pretty well. You know, going back years, we've saw guys like Pat Williams and Ted Washington for the Bills in years past age well. Like, we've seen the big fatties age well. Like, it's one position, I would say, or one of the few positions in the NFL where you can be an older player and still be a pretty impactful player. So the age does not really concern me. Still low 30s. I'd extend him 2 years. I mean, I'd give him like almost the same deal he got when he came, right? Like, give him a 2-year, whatever he got before, give him that same contract and see if he would be willing to take it. So I'm all for giving him that contract before the season.
100%. I'm in 100% agreement with you. We had this conversation again. Like, I've been digging up the receipts, good and bad, from last offseason. And one of our goods was we did a show last offseason with Justice General, who's doing big things over at 96.5 WUFO Sports. Jake Jordan doing big things over in the XFL with the Orlando Guardians. We knew them before they were famous, guys, here at the Air Raid Hour. We did a show with them last year. All four of us, consensus. Who was our best free agent signing outside of Von Miller? We all said DaQuan Jones. All big fans of that fact. And you mentioned it. You can age into that position. The Jets just signed Al Woods. He's like 500 years old, and he's still an effective one tech. Like, the list of effective one techs who are 800 years old, it goes on and on and on. And I think DaQuan Jones can be that. There are really like two courses of action you could take if you're the Buffalo Bills, right? You can re-sign both of your one techs, DaQuan Jones, Poona Ford. Let your 3 techs walk. Jordan Phillips, who's had an injury history, Ed Oliver, who's underperformed, might get overpaid elsewhere, Tim Settle, etc., who's underperformed. Or you can re-sign your 3 techs, right? You can re-sign Ed Oliver, you can re-sign Jordan Phillips, you can let your 1 techs walk and go look for some more big fatties in the draft and free agency next year. You could go that sort of middle route where you re-sign 1 and 1, like you re-sign Jordan Phillips and you re-sign, DaQuan Jones. But so there's a lot of options the Buffalo Bills had. Me personally, I'm extending DaQuan Jones now. If Poona Ford has a good season, I'm giving Poona Ford a second contract, and I'm resetting the 3 tech. I'm letting Phillips walk. I'm letting Settle walk. I'm letting Oliver walk, and I'm resetting the 3 tech in 2024 because I think these guys just age better. I'm a fan of these guys' game, and I even think Poona Ford has 3 tech potential as well, and he can rotate at both spots.
And I would say this, I think dollars-wise, re-signing DaQuan and Ford would be cheaper than bringing back Oliver, Phillips. And then
get a
maybe
3 tech
there's
on another 5-year rookie deal.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. And you could invest in the draft at that position and sort of have that cost controlled on the interior of defensive line with, obviously, you're paying Von Miller big bucks, but at the edges, other than Von Miller, you're not really super invested dollars-wise either. So all of a sudden, like, other than Von Miller, you don't have a lot of cash invested in this defensive line in 2024.
Listen, we've only ever been wrong about one big fatty in our entire, 4 years as a podcast now. We're just not going to talk about Tyler Shelvin. We're just not going to talk about it. we're just going to pretend like he never existed. We've only been wrong about one. So that brings up sort of the last, I think, big name returning UFA in 2024. This is a tricky one. AJ Epinesa, right? He had 6.5 sacks last season. People question the validity of maybe some of those sacks. The quietest 6.5 season ever. Only 24 years old, went through a serious body composition change since being drafted out of Iowa. Maybe it's starting to click. His 2023 role, he's probably the starting right end until Von Miller is ready. And then he's probably the number 3, the first guy off the bench, unless Shaq Lawson outperforms him. The poll results, 5% want to extend him now or in season. 58% want to wait until the offseason to decide. And a whopping 37% say their mind is made up, let him walk. And I will say in the comment section of that tweet, I think a lot of that 37% was sign Justin Houston, trade AJ Epenesa for a 4th-round pick, which that's not an option I gave. But if the Buffalo Bills were to, in reality, use that 90th roster spot and sign Justin Houston tomorrow, I'd be game for trading AJ Epenesa. I don't think with the Von Miller injury, I don't think with what the Buffalo Bills invested in AJ Epenesa, unless we sign a guy, until we do that, I don't think there's any avenue in which AJ Epenesa is traded at all before his contract expires. But what are your thoughts on the future of AJ Epenesa and the Buffalo Bills?
Well, again, you start looking at 2024 and you look at who you have available on the edge. You have Kingsley Jonathan under contract. You have Basham obviously will be going into his final year, and then you have Rousseau and Miller. So I think I'm with the majority again on this one. It was like 50 whatever percent. Like I think I let him play out the season, but I'm very much open to giving AJ Epenesa a second contract, depending on what he does this season. Again, the 6.5 sacks I mentioned in talking about Ed Oliver, what those 10 sacks for him could be this year. Are they going to be impactful? Like AJ Epenesa's 6.5 sacks last year were hollow. Like I don't care what anyone says. Like there wasn't a ton of impact on the outcome of games from him. Maybe one, right? Maybe one. But it's just been this whole conversation around his body type and his composition, like since he's been here, and it's just frustrating, right? Because I feel like he's never really been comfortable here. Feel like he's never really been put in a great position to succeed. I do think that with Sean McDermott running the show this year on defense is probably maybe a last gasp for AJ Epenesa to be put in, a position where we can use his strengths, right? Which is like, to me, like he's a power edge rusher. And that's something that I feel like he can be I feel like he could best case be a slightly better version of Shaq Lawson. I think worst case is he's a worse version of Shaq Lawson, right? Like that's kind of where I'm landing with him, but I would be open to giving him a new contract because like if he plays well this year, you'd hate to lose out. Like think about it, losing out on Ed Oliver 1st-round pick. He's walking potentially. Tremaine Edmonds walks. AJ Epenesa, if he walks, like fans are not going to be happy about seeing all these early round picks walking.
And it's so tough too, right? Because like, again, my vote is B, wait until the offseason to decide. But even that is tricky because if he comes out and has 10 sacks this year, I question whether and again, I'll have to trust the tape guys because I'll question whether those 10 sacks were AJ Epenesa or those 10 sacks were a product of
if he gets 10 sacks, if he gets 10 sacks, I'm re-signing him. I don't care.
Because what if he gets 10 sacks, but he's a product of everything around him? And it's nice to get 10 sacks, but he wants to be paid like a 10 sack guy. And as Von Miller gets older, you question whether AJ Epenesa could do that in his own merit, right? Like that's where it gets tricky. Right? Like that's where it gets so difficult. So I'll have to defer to the tape guys. And when that happens, whether AJ Epenesa's, if he does in some, again, we're just projecting here, like it's 10 sacks, right? Like if we're just throwing that out there, if he does that, I'll have to defer to the tape guys. Were those 10 sacks legitimately him beating his dude and being a guy? Like finally it just all clicked. His body composition is right. His talent is right. And it just finally all clicked. Or was it like, oh, those were all 10 like cleanup sacks because of Von Miller and Gregory Rousseau and all the other talent around him and Sean McDermott maybe being a little bit more aggressive in the scheme? Because if that's the case, I'm not paying him like a 10 sack dude. Like I'm not giving him a Carl Lawson contract. Now, on the other hand, if he goes out this year and has 6.5 sacks again and proves to be a quality rotational edge rusher, which he proved to be last year, he was quality rotational edge rusher. Our defensive line fell apart when Von Miller was gone, but when Von Miller was healthy, AJ Epenesa was fine. He was a cog in the machine. If he wants $3-4 million to be a cog in the machine for another 4 years, okay. But I question whether he'll ever be that dude. So I question whether I ever want to give him that big old contract.
Just to put things a little bit in perspective, and I mean, AK Cash just kind of triggered me here on this one, not like in a bad way, but just triggered my memory. Chris Kelsey
Yes,
from the
that's what I
Bills
thought.
got a 4-year, $28 million deal from the Bills in, I believe it was 2010,
All the regret.
right? And so, like, Chris Kelsey can get a 4-year, $28 million deal. I'd probably, I mean, like, AJ Epenesa is not getting anywhere near that
Yeah.
right now. But if he has 10
Yeah.
sacks, he could get that type of deal. But man, that's wild to think about that. Chris
Yeah,
Kelsey,
like I said, if
robbery.
AJ Epinesa wants to play for scraps like Shaq Lawson, cool, right? And maybe he has to go sign a contract somewhere else and then come back to Buffalo like Shaq did. That's fine. If he's going to be a career fourth edge rusher, he's going to be a solid fourth edge rusher, I'm okay re-signing him if the money is right. But if he wants to get paid like an elite edge because maybe he put some statistics this year, I'm going to question, and I'm going to have to defer to those tape guys whether those statistics were legit, because it's been a disappointing 3 years so far. And last year wasn't bad. So I shouldn't even, like, it's disappointing because of where he was drafted, but last year wasn't even that bad. But all right, on to some notable other pending free agents. And I want to start with three guys who weren't Buffalo Bills in 2022. Damian Harris signed a 1 year sort of like prove it deal. Poona Ford, 1 year, prove it deal. Taylor Rapp, 1 year, prove it deal. Like, these are guys who we thought were going to get money in free agency who came to Buffalo for 1 year and scraps, table scraps. So the question is, what do they have to do in 2023 to maybe earn a healthier contract with the Buffalo Bills in 2024? Let's start with Damian Harris, 26 years old. So a little bit higher of an age for a guy who is heading into his second contract in the National Football League. 2022 had a down year, 462 yards, 4.4 yards per carry, only 3 touchdowns. His projected 2023 role, at least in my opinion, he will be the red zone running back and he will be the short yardage back. What does Damian Harris need to do to earn a second contract with the Buffalo Bills?
I think the bar is fairly low, to be honest. I think he has to be better than Zach Moss. He's got to obviously beat out Latavius Murray in training camp for that roster spot. And see, there you go. I think Latavius Murray. I think people sleep on Latavius Murray because of his age and because he signed so late in free agency, but he has juice left in the tank. I don't know that he needs to have 10 touchdowns, as Brian says here, to get another contract, but I do think he needs to be fairly significantly better than what Zach Moss brought to the table when he was here. And I think it also depends on whether the Bills want to continue to play kind of this musical chairs at running back, right? I think that the Bills, since Brandon Beane's been here, have been pretty okay with kind of middling draft pick running backs and or free agent signings. Now they kind of went a little bit higher of an investment last year, obviously, with drafting James Cook in the second. But in my mind, I see a future where a James Cook, Damian Harris pairing could be a multi-year pairing if Damian Harris can parlay 2023 into a good season, because I think their skill sets complement each other well, at least stylistically. It'll just be a matter of execution, I think, and whether or not like Dorsey can kind of ebb and flow off of each other with the two of them, because I do think as a pairing, they do make for a pretty interesting tandem.
100%. I think Damian Harris is a perfect complement to James Cook. I think between the 20s, James Cook is your dude this year. But when you're backed up against your own goal line, or you're on your own goal line, or you're on the opposing goal line, I think Damian Harris might be your dude. I think his role, or Latavius. Let's just say it's Damian Harris, though. People sort of I don't want to say people forget, but so I will just say this. In 2021, 2 seasons ago, Damian Harris had 15 touchdowns. He had a Jamal Williams type of year. 13 of those 15 came in the red zone. The Buffalo Bills struggled in the red zone last year. Josh Allen had 5 red zone interceptions. He felt like the world was on his shoulders, and he made more mistakes than he typically does in the red zone. So if Damian Harris can come in and he could alleviate some of the pressure from Josh Allen in the red zone, and he could produce 10 to 15 touchdowns inside the 20-yard line, it's going to be tough not to pay him in 2024, because the other option is, well, he's just a goal line bruiser. He's expendable. We'll go find another goal line bruiser. Well, here's your track record with goal line bruisers: Mike Tolbert, Chris Ivory, Frank Gore, and Zach Moss.
God.
Not a great track record, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. So if Damian Harris proves to be that dude and he is effective in the red zone and he takes that pressure off of Josh Allen, it's going to be tough not to pay him. Even though most people will say, don't pay running backs, they're expendable.
Don't pay running backs, but again, if he can come back for like a $3 million AAV, something in that range, like look at Devin Singletary. We thought like there was a chance he could get 4 to 5. He gets like under 3 million from the Texans for 1 year, right? So it's like they are expendable, but the league has sort of like collectively depressed the value of running backs as well. And so the contracts, I feel like outside of some outliers, are kind of finally catching up, I think, to how the league is valuing running backs, and they're willing to just kind of churn and burn a little bit more. So I think even if Harris has a pretty good year, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to make a ton of money on the open market. And if it's a good fit for him football wise, and he is successful with the Bills and the Bills are a good team, like he may be willing to come back. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Astro comes in and says, I miss Marcus Murphy. Don't even get me started, Astro. So yesterday, my wife was at her sort of end of the year work party. She was gone all day. I was on baby duty, newborn baby duty. And, you know, most of you who have who have had previously like a newborn, and you know this, Dave, I'm lucky. My baby is so low maintenance. It is, she eats, she poops, and she sleeps. And whenever she wails, it's because she's hungry. So I just have a newborn on my arm all day yesterday, and I was bored. So I had my phone in my other hand. I was just strolling through memory lane. Greg Salas, Marcus Easley, Deontay Thompson, Naaman Roosevelt. I was having
Sam Aiken.
Yeah, I didn't even put Sam Aiken on there. I was having a day. Justin Hunter. I was having a day on Twitter yesterday because I literally had nothing else to do. The remote control was too far away, and the baby was asleep in one hand, so the phone was my only option. All right, back to the regular show here. Poona Ford is another 1-year deal. Do we bring him back in 2024? Age 27, so again, a little older for a guy going on to a second contract, probably why he was underdrafted 4 seasons ago. 22 tackles and 3 sacks last year. Again, doesn't really tell the story with those interior guys. His projected 2023 role, backup 1 tech with some 3 tech ability. What do you do with Poona Ford after this 2023 season?
Well, I think there's a better than 50% chance you bring him back in 2024. And the reason I say that is because at the moment, you don't have DaQuan Jones under contract in 2024. Like, right? If he does sign an extension, which we hope he does, maybe that changes things a bit. But when I hear all the tape guys talking about Poona Ford being a good fit for the Bills, and when I hear other people getting excited about that signing this late in the free agency and him being a pretty solid player, like I've really liked the defensive lineman that Pete Carroll, like you can say what you want about Pete Carroll, but I really like kind of the way that he's crafted his defensive lines over the years. And I think Ford is going to be a good fit for the Bills. And I think that he will have a chance to make an impact. Like he's not going to be a box score stuffer, as you mentioned, but shoring up that run defense, I think, is going to be something that I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to this season, especially because DaQuan Jones, when he wasn't in the game last year or a few games last year, there was some pretty sizable impact. So maybe this situation lends itself to the Bills getting a little bit of insurance for that, but also giving Poona Ford a chance to kind of earn a deal beyond 2023. And I think in the same vein that we're going to talk about Taylor Rapp, I kind of see Poona Ford in that sort of, he's going to play. He might not be the starter. He's here for what looks to be like an odd 1-year deal, maybe not so odd for Poona, more odd for Taylor Rapp, but a chance maybe for him to kind of get into a good situation for beyond 2023. And maybe it's playing the long game here with a guy like Poona Ford.
Yeah, and maybe I'm setting myself up for disappointment, but I have huge expectations for Poona Ford in 2024. I think he's going to be a key contributor to sort of what this team aspires to do, what they aspire to be, especially on defense, especially with Tremaine Edmonds gone and sort of the reset at the secondary or the second linebacker position. maybe I'm setting myself up for disappointment. I don't know, but I look at Poona Ford. I'm team extend DaQuan Jones now, re-sign Poona Ford next offseason if everything works out, and reset the 3-tech. And you mentioned it earlier. You can get a 3-tech. You can draft one in the first 3 rounds and get them under contract for 5 years, right? With that 5th-year option, especially if you take them in the first round, like Ed Oliver. And you can just consistently let those 3-tech walks. Then you could reset your fat guys in 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. Reset your 3-techs next offseason, reset your 1-techs. Obviously, you can just do 1 and 1, re-sign one on each side and try to not pigeonhole yourself. So if the board falls a certain way, you can take whatever kind of defensive tackle you want. But I'm team re-sign both 1-techs. I think I have high hopes for Poona Ford. I hope he plays well. I hope him and DaQuan Jones are Buffalo Bills in 2024, and we reset that 3-tech spot. All right, the next guy up, and this is one of the 3. It's Ford, it's Harris, and then it's Taylor Rapp. Age 25, 58 tackles last season, 2 interceptions. His projected 2023 role, I mean, this guy is going to be the jack of all trades backup nickel behind Teron Johnson. We don't ever want to see Teron Johnson, Siran Neal on the field again. Backup free safety in case Micah Hyde gets hurt. He missed almost all of last season. Backup strong safety behind Jordan Poyer. Jordan Poyer played hurt a ton last year. Absolute baller, but played through a lot. And a guy like that doesn't come to Buffalo just to be a jack of all trades backup. There's probably some sub-package linebacker, aka thick dime stuff for him in the cards as well. What are your thoughts on Taylor Rapp being a Buffalo Bill beyond 2024?
I'm very pro Taylor Rapp being a Buffalo Bill beyond 2024. And I think this is a situation where you look at it and you really can see the long game potential here. And probably Taylor Rapp and his agent and his family or whoever looking at the situation saying, look, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, basically became all-pro safeties. Both became all-pro safeties after moving to the Buffalo Bills under Sean McDermott's coaching, right? And Taylor Rapp is a player with talent, right? Former second rounder, I believe. And he's going to get playing time this year. Sean McDermott's going to move him all over the field in the back end. And when I say back end, I mean, like, he's going to play both safety positions. He's going to play nickel. He's going to be all over the field. He's not coming here to be a traditional backup as it would appear on the depth chart. He's going to get playing time. He's probably going to get 300, 400 snaps on defense. I would imagine. I'd be shocked if it's really significantly less than that. And potentially the heir apparent to Jordan Poyer when he eventually leaves. And so that may look weird because Jordan Poyer is still here in 2024. However, depending on what kind of role he fills this year, maybe he does that a little bit more again in 2024 and some other things. And then eventually, like, this is a long-term home for him. So maybe after 2023, it's like a 3-year, 4-year type of thing for him. And then he eventually does become the heir apparent at that strong side, at that strong safety position.
Yeah, Jessica Tans comes in and says, Neal defended Kelsey last year, and Kelsey had like his worst game. Do you think Rapp can keep up with Kelsey? Yeah, I mean, listen, Siran Neal might have had some luck against Travis Kelsey, playing overly physical. The referees allowed him to get away with some stuff. He had a good game against him. Don't know if Siran Neal, again, I love Siran Neal, the special teamer. A lot of questions about ever putting Siran Neal on the field for defense. So if Taylor Rapp can sort of take that role as like a tight end stopper, like that's a role that he could fill in the 2023 season. Mm-hmm. My biggest issue with projecting Taylor Rapp as a Buffalo Bill beyond 2024 is the fact that both me and you are in agreement that his best position is probably strong safety, where he could play more up towards in the box more. And Jordan Poyer's under contract for 2 more years. Teron Johnson, his second probably best position, nickel corner, 2 more years. So the biggest hole that could be open, Micah Hyde, free safety, you question whether he can be like a full-time center fielder. He can do it in a pinch. He can do it for some games. Do you want to be your full-time center fielder? I don't know. Probably not, unless we see something on the field in 2023 that makes us feel otherwise. So if you're Taylor Rapp and you got to wait 2 years for a legitimate role in this defense, you got to wait out Jordan Poyer, or you got to wait out Teron Johnson, more likely Poyer than Johnson. You might ask yourself in the offseason, like, whether going back to Buffalo is worth it. Like, did I show enough in my jack of all trades role to go get a contract to start somewhere else? So Taylor Rapp might just see this is a 1-year spot to sort of leapfrog himself elsewhere. He might have different motivations in the Bills. Because if I'm the Bills, I would love to have him as a jack of all trades backup for 2 years, and then Jordan Poyer's replacement when he's 27 years old in 2025. I don't know Taylor Rapp's going to want that. So it'll be interesting to see how all of those things develop over the course of the 2023 season. Because, like, Jordan Poyer gets hurt and Taylor Rapp is your everyday strong safety for 10 plus games and he does well, you probably move on from Jordan Poyer. Maybe they center field Jordan Poyer and they move Taylor Rapp to strong safety. Like, there's a number of different possibilities that could be in play here. The next one we're going to talk about was Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson, age 30 and 28. Their roles in 2023, Phillips a rotational 3-tech, Shaq Lawson a rotational edge. To me, both of these guys are always welcome back in Buffalo as long as they're willing to take bottom of the barrel prices. You might want to reconsider Jordan Phillips if he can't stay healthy again in 2023. But what are your thoughts on Phillips and Lawson?
I mean, you hit it, right? It's like, welcome them back. The door's open for the
it's
weird minimum.
It's weird that talented players like that can be treated like AJ Klein and Dean Marlowe. It's weird.
Well, health has obviously been a big story for Jordan Phillips. When he's healthy, and he's certainly a capable player, and he's certainly an emotional uplift for the team when he's in the game, right? He definitely brings some emotion that the Bills really could use. When Von Miller went down, like a lot of air went out of the team on the defensive side of the ball, right? Obviously, with Micah Hyde being out, that's the same. Tremaine's gone. Like, there needs to be, I mean, Milano is obviously going to be sort of that guy for the team, and he has always been kind of more of that sort of intense, sort of emotional guy when he gets going. But Jordan Phillips brings that to the table as well. When he starts to get going and he's making plays, like, he can definitely rev up a crowd and rev up the intensity. So for him, it's about health. And for Shaq Lawson, I think it's pretty evident that his role is really an edge setting, sort of run defending edge player as a rotational player. Like, he's not really giving you anything as a real pass rusher. Like, if he gets a couple sacks, during the course of the season, I think that's a bonus, but it's where I think he fits the best from a football standpoint. And we've kind of seen that after he got that big contract. Football wise, he got his money elsewhere, but football wise, he plays his best here. And I think, like, it was probably a little bit of pride he had to swallow that he wasn't going to be that sort of 10 sack a year guy. And that this was kind of where he fits as an NFL player, right? Like, he's not that guy. And so he's always welcome back. Like you said, again, not a ton of, like, depth at this position again, especially obviously defensive tackle. But again, vet minimums, welcome him back. It'll be interesting to see if the Bills keep running this back year after year. But yeah, they're always welcome back, I think.
The last one I got here is Dane Jackson, age 26. His 2023 role, hopefully, I think we're both in agreement, and I think most of the comment section is in agreement. Hopefully CB4, but the Buffalo Bills guaranteed him his $2 million contract for this year. So the Buffalo Bills clearly like him as a player, despite having Trey White, Kyrie Elam, Christian Benford. So what are your thoughts about Dane Jackson's future in Buffalo with White, Elam, and Benford possibly ahead of him heading into the 2024 season?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different with Dane Jackson than when Levi Wallace was kind of walking out the door, because we didn't have that guy in-house, right? We tried the Josh Norman experiment. It didn't work. The Bills were really left with Trey White and really coming off that injury, like, you had to go out and draft a corner, right? Like, they were really up against it. So I think, as Steve says, Dane's the definition of solid backup, good numbers for backup, and can never have enough corners. And that's kind of where I lean. Like, I would really like I just think him being back, and we talked about this when he re-signed, just really rounded out the room and took just kind of like set the domino for the entire secondary to fall into place. I think, especially for putting a little bit less pressure again on Benford. Obviously, he played well as a rookie. Competition between these guys is going to always bring out the best in them. Trey White coming back now a year removed from another year removed from his injury. Kyrie Elam going into year 2, like just really rounds out the room. So I look, I think Dane Jackson probably would think in his mind, if he can go out there and get some good reps this year, like he could potentially be a starting outside corner as a CB2 elsewhere in the league. And he probably could, right? He probably could, but this year is going to probably be a challenge because I would imagine the reps are not going to be as as high as they were last year with Elam going into year 2 and with White again another year removed. But if he can have solid play this year, he might kind of see that as his one opportunity then to go out and get a starting job somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, Dane Jackson, you don't want Dane Jackson to be your starter, but you don't really concern yourself. Like, you don't really feel bad if he is starting, right? Like, middle of the season, Trey White is out for a couple of weeks. Dane Jackson has to start. You're not sweating it. I would love Dane Jackson to be here for the next 4 years as a backup at $2 million per year. I would love that. But you hit the nail on the head towards the end there. Like, is that what Dane Jackson wants, right? Because if Kyrie Elam works out, if Christian Benford works out, if Trey White rounds back into form 2 years removed from an ACL, where's a path to the field for Dane Jackson? There's none, barring injury, and he's probably going to look elsewhere, turning 27 years old next year like Levi Wallace, for a starting opportunity. But there is a couple of caveats to this, right? Like, development of Alex Austin is a factor. He's another guy who probably should have gone earlier, went in the 7th round. Dane Jackson was a very similar player. If Alex Austin steps up and the Buffalo Bills feel comfortable, you can boot Dane Jackson out the door. You can save that $2 million and you can slide Alex Austin into that role. So that's one thing you have to factor into the equation. Another, we've talked about Christian Benford moving to safety where the Bills are rather thin with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer getting up there in age. We've talked about moving Christian Benford to safety. I had a couple of people I trust say maybe Trey White could age into free safety role. Trey White could age into the center fielding free safety role. So do the Bills want to do that next year? Do they want to do that 2 years from now? And if Trey White moves into that safety role, or even Christian Benford moves into that safety role, that eliminates one of the corners from the competition, and Dane Jackson has a better chance of seeing the field. So there's a lot of different things to look for in 2023 about whether Dane Jackson returns or not. But I think if everything holds steady, if Kyrie Elam develops, if Trey White re-solidifies himself as CB1, and Christian Benford keeps looking like Christian Benford, unfortunately, I think Dane Jackson is going to look to walk, as you mentioned, in 2024. The Buffalo Bills kind of had some leverage this year. He was an RFA, but then on top of being an RFA, the Buffalo Bills sort of were like, listen, we'll give you a little bit extra. And they tacked on some money to that deal, gave him that $2 million guaranteed. All right, so we've worked our way through all of the relevant UDF or UFAs in 2024. Like, we didn't talk about Kyle Allen. We didn't talk about AJ Klein. We didn't talk about, some of those guys. But, if they play well, cool. Then the Buffalo Bills will likely re-sign them. If not, they'll move on in 2024. We're not going to sit here and go into the weeds with all of the UFAs because there's like 27 of them. It's just the way the NFL works nowadays.
Latavius, bring him back.
Yeah, Latavius. There we go. Trent Sherfield. Yeah, there's so many. Couple more things. We were supposed to talk about this at the top of the show, but I missed it. Mostly probably because I drank too many beers this afternoon. DeAndre Hopkins was on the I Am Athlete podcast the last couple of days. We're a cultured show, so we don't do the clickbaity stuff until the end. We save the clickbaity stuff. We don't lead with the clickbait stuff. We wait till the end. He's on the I Am Athlete podcast. He was asked to list 5 QBs he would want to play with. His first answer was Josh Allen. Ooh. He listed 3 things he wants. He listed 3 things he wants in a new team. A QB who loves the game. It's important to note that he said he knows Kyler loves the game, but Kyler's hurt. I think he was fibbing a little bit. Stable management and a great defense because defense wins championships. I'm not overly invested in this whole DeAndre Hopkins talk. To me, that went by the wayside a long time ago. But to me, and I want your opinion on this. All of DeAndre Hopkins' words this offseason scream that he wants to be a member of the Buffalo Bills, right?
Yeah, could be. Does Mac Jones love the game? We know that Bill
he loves Taylor Swift. He loves Taylor Swift.
Bill Belichick and DeAndre have something going there, though. I will say
they have a bromance.
Yeah, they have a bromance. But you think about okay, what teams come to mind? Like the Bills come to mind, the Chiefs potentially come to mind.
Patrick
right?
Mahomes was third behind Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts when he listed 5 off the top of his head. That's all I'm saying.
The Eagles would be interesting, but he would probably be wide receiver 3 for them, right? Devontae Smith is legit. AJ Brown's legit. Yeah, he literally described. I think it's the Bills and the Chiefs, and I think dark horse. If you want to throw a dark horse, you probably would have to say the Pats are in the would be in consideration just because of his bromance.
I don't know about the Giants now with all the receivers they cited drafted, but
the Giants really have a great defense? It's okay. Does Daniel Jones love football?
No. You know Daniel Jones. You know Daniel Jones's number one love is football because no man walks out of the house with that haircut if football is the number one thing on his mind.
Giants quarterbacks and their haircuts, man. I don't know if the
Ravens
had a nice run.
I know the Bills are up against it. I don't know if the Ravens have the money. Jessica Tennis says,
the Ravens signed Odell, right? So it's I don't think that's a fit for them anymore.
She says, does Hopkins get cut June 1st? I doubt it. Monty Ossenforth is the new GM there in Arizona. He doesn't want to sort of give DeAndre Hopkins away. He doesn't want to be like a pushover. He doesn't want to sort of project that he's sort of a pushover GM. So I just doubt he gets cut June 1st. It's really funny. The reports came out the Cardinals never were really that serious about trading DeAndre Hopkins. And DeAndre Hopkins was like, oh, I was never that serious about getting traded from Arizona. But then he goes on the I Am Athlete podcast today and goes, no, I just love Phoenix. It's a great place to live, which I agree. It's a great place to live. He's like, so I'm just going to live here forever. He literally was like, yeah, I love Arizona. I'm going to stay here. His home base, not the football team. So it's just he continues to just stoke the flames this offseason. He keeps Twitter a buzzing. So it'll be interesting. I lean towards talk to me when he gets cut or talk to me when he gets traded, but there was some interesting comments today from DeAndre Hopkins. All right. To close things out today, I got a Jabroni of the week, Dave. I don't know if you have a Jabroni of the week, but I always love shitting on AFC East teams. Whenever I have an opportunity to shit on the Patriots, to shit on the Dolphins, to shit on the Jets, I want to take the time to do that. Okay. Now, we already mentioned Mac Jones was he was at a Taylor Swift concert and he was having himself a grand old time in an awesome outfit, but that's not my Jabroni of the week. My Jabroni of the week is the New York Jets. Running back Ty Johnson, I don't know if you saw this or not, on a podcast was talking about how he was released from the New York Jets. He tore his pec working out on his own, so he got injured working out, preparing for next season. The Jets asked him to get surgery on his torn pec. He did not want the surgery, but he obliged the Jets. He's like, all right, if you want me to get the surgery, I will get this surgery. What do the Jets do a day after he gets the surgery? They cut him.
Wow.
So he goes onto this podcast. He explains his side of the story. All these players from around the NFL are coming out now out of the woodwork saying how wrong it is for when players get hurt working out in the offseason, preparing for the next season outside of the team facility, how wrong it is that their contracts aren't guaranteed. This is a bad look, in my opinion, for the New York Jets to release Ty Johnson, who's a quality running back too. What does it hurt stashing that dude on the pup list? It doesn't. It really doesn't. He's a quality back. It's a bad look for the New York Jets, in my opinion. I don't know if you heard that story, what your reaction to it is.
Well, I've always liked Ty Johnson. I always felt like he should have gotten more playing time with the Jets, pretty good between the tackles, really good pass catcher. in his limited opportunities. Like, I thought he has played pretty well in his time there. And obviously the Jets, you can't fault them with Breece Hall and Michael Carter, but like he's a good player. Like he's a player that I think would find a home on an NFL team, and he could be probably as good as a running back too for some teams, I think, and be a pretty good contributor. Like, I think he would be an awesome sort of compliment to a guy like Derrick Henry if he was in Tennessee, like that type of thing. But the Jets just, it's funny because the Jets, like you want to, well, at least I want to say, like, they've had some pretty good moments in the Joe Douglas era and sort of under his management. Like, they've had a couple really good drafts. They seem to have made some pretty good roster moves, but like then they go out and pull just a total Jets move here. And it's just one of those things you just shake your head at. I feel bad for Ty Johnson, and I think that pretty solid jabroni of the week. I'll kind of go with a impromptu jabroni of the week here. I'm not a big Brooks Koepka fan. Obviously, he won the PGA Championship yesterday. He's not my jabroni of the week, but all those guys that were like coming up to him as he was like walking up to the clubhouse, and like these like who are all these bros? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, there were like 20 different dudes like randomly like coming up to him and like tank tops, and like they're not even in like golf clothes. I'm like, who are these guys? And so like jabroni of the week for me is all of those guys. I don't like them.
Steve Rose comes in and says Colin Cowherd compared Tatum to Jason Tatum with the Boston Celtics to Josh Allen and said Allen gets 7,000 yards against the Texans but can't play well against good teams like the Chiefs. First of all, Colin Cowherd's a smart guy. Like, legitimately, like he has some quality takes when he puts his mind to it, but he knows exactly what he's saying and why he's saying it. Like, this is just dumb, right? Like, Josh Allen walked off the football field with a lead and 13 seconds left in Arrowhead. That's like Jason Tatum hitting a 3-pointer to send the Boston Celtics to the NBA Finals in an elimination game, and his other 4 teammates not playing defense and the other team going down and scoring a layup with 3 seconds left, right? Like, that's the equivalent to what happened. So Josh Allen's beaten the Chiefs twice in the regular season. He's one of the top 3 players in football, top 5 players in football, top 3 quarterbacks, top 5 maybe players in totality. Jason Tatum's not that. Like, Jason Tatum's like maybe top 10 in the NBA. He shows up here and there, has a big game here or there. That's not Josh Allen. Josh Allen's pretty consistently good throughout the course of the football season. So Colin Cowherd knows what he's doing. He knows what he's saying. He knows it'll get a reaction on people. I know I should ignore these people. I still could not stop myself. Like, I've stopped responding to Nick Wright. Like, I've stopped. Like, I've cured myself of the Nick Wright syndrome. But now I can't stop calling out Emmanuel Aiko. He's my new one. Like, he's insufferable.
Yep. Yeah,
he
really is.
Right when you cure yourself of one, another appears. And it's just Emmanuel Aiko, Joy Taylor, Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd. Who else says stupid shit on the internet? I don't know. That's all I got for now. But Jason McIntyre,
Jason Whitlock.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole different.
Well, but even sports wise,
yeah. So it is what it is. We're trying to all cure ourselves of
listen local, right?
of the national disease. And yes, you're right. Listen local. You know, if you have a chance and you're ever interested, Cover One Pass, right? Exclusive member only content, in-depth analysis, including scheme, player, and player breakdowns, scouting reports, analytic analysis, access on unlimited devices, access to our premium content on the Slack channel. So a whole bunch of different things for only $57 a year. Plus you get a cool decal and a t-shirt. So stop listening to Colin Cowherd. Start listening to all of the shows that Cover One has to offer, including tomorrow night, the Going Deep podcast, Anthony Prohaska, Disguise Coverage, Wednesday night, the film room. And then you also got Aaron and Greg in the Cover One Buffalo show. And then Thursday, you have Buffalo Late Night, which we were Buffalo Late Night tonight, not to steal anything from Thomas there.
And then the brand new, not so brand new anymore, Greg Tumset.
Yeah,
show
Graham
on
Touch
Fridays.
Sports on Fridays. You got Under Review with Joe DeRosa on Saturdays. I mean, we got you covered here at Cover One. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us a little later than usual. I apologize. I'm gonna start taking the off season serious. I'm gonna get off the golf course and I'm gonna get here on time next time. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!